Okay. Hi, Guthrie, and welcome to these sessions on leaders in EdTech. Absolutely most welcome. It's brilliant that you're on board, and it'd be really interesting to hear, where you started from and ultimately where you see your business going to, and why you've decided to enter into sort of this EdTech market, which is obviously full of different businesses and lots of different solutions, and why yours will differentiate more and stand out above all the rest. But before we start, it'd be really, really interesting, because I know a lot of people who watch these interviews are quite interested in the sort of background of where the business owners have come from. So if you don't mind, if you just give us a bit of a background in where you've come from, how you got to the point of basically deciding to build the business, which is Applica, and where you started from, really, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, Nick, thanks so much for having us. I think I'm actually going to take these off.
Yeah, no, really delighted. Really great to be able to speak with you about this. I guess where did it start? So my background's teaching. So I'm a geography teacher by trade, yeah, was teaching out in West London, teaching out in Greenford High School, and yeah, there I met another geography teacher, Tim Dixon, and while I was teaching geography, we actually had this idea for sort of a career system, like a LinkedIn for young people.
Yep.
So that was sort of our first idea. We had kids who would have been perfect for apprenticeships, and so you had the apprenticeship levy coming out, and we thought it was going to go bananas. So we wanted to basically provide a system or like a platform where kids could get opportunities, build a profile, blah 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 blah. So yeah, we did that. We started that in about 2013-14.
Okay.
At the time I was still sort of teaching a little bit, so I moved down to part-time, and then started doing supply teaching around London, which was pretty interesting, like getting to see other schools, having just been at Greenford, and yeah, did that, and then got a little bit of traction with it, and it was starting to, so went full-time, and yeah, then grew a small team, and yeah, that took us to about 2015-16, but the whole concept didn't really materialize. We thought that the levy was going to mean that employers were going to want to hire a lot more young people, but actually the levy was used to upskill existing staff.
Yeah.
So actually there was like a proliferation of leadership management courses that came out, and I'm sure there were young people getting jobs as well, but the funding actually didn't sort of trickle down, if you like, and so there wasn't the investment in the recruitment and the hiring of 16 to 24-year-olds. So actually the numbers went down, and so yeah, that sort of ran its course. But as it was running its course, and as we were thinking about what to do, in 2016, sorry Nick, this is a really long story.
No, it's interesting. Go on. Yeah.
No, well, in 2016, Tim, who was still teaching at Greenford, he was still teaching there, and he was working. He had a sixth form, and so they, for years, had been trying to get their admissions online, and in some areas they had a really good in-house IT manager who had developed sort of a form, and so they had an online aspect to it, but the IT guy moved on, and with it the keys to the software went. So Jeremy Jones, head of sixth form, big shout out to Jeremy, legend. He was like, Tim, you also a geography man, also a geographer, the best teachers are the geographers. He was like, yeah, or Tim, he was like, Tim, what can you do? Can you get your guys who have been doing this ULAS career system?
Yeah.
Could you build an online admission system? And so Tim was like, "I'll see what I can do." And so he got one of the team to allocate focus on that.
Yep.
So just developing basically a form, if you like, and then a system to manage the applicants.
Okay.
And it did a few other basic things like collect references, and some quite nifty stuff on enrollment day about getting kids into classes. And so, yeah, that was it. 2016, that was the start. And then we quickly realized that looking at the numbers, did a bit of research and looked across the sixth forms in the UK, well, in saying that, in England, and about 70% for their sixth form applications, they were still downloading, using downloaded forms. So that's when we thought, hang on a minute, this isn't just a problem for Greenford, this is something that is going to be helpful for other schools. So yeah, that was for me, like it was great seeing it for Tim, and it was great that I was working for Greenford, but to know like potentially other schools would want it, that was like a confirmation that it could be useful. It could be useful beyond Greenford.
Yeah. And actually, did you actually do that lot of research, or did you just know that there was lots of schools just through talking to them, or how did you get to the point of understanding about 80% was still doing, admissions manually, effectively?
Well, that was that. Yeah. So that was when Tim was like, we're doing this in Greenford, I was like, that's great. And it sounds really like it's going to be useful for them. And then looked at the schools in the UK, and you just went onto their websites, and some of them did. They did have, some of them had online forms like baked into the website builder.
Yeah.
So we said, fine, let's say they're off for now. But still, there were 80-70% that were using, some weren't even using Google Forms. So we were like, well, there's a need here. But very quickly, we realized that it's not just a form. Like that was one of the things I was like, what are people not just going to use Google Forms? To Tim, I was saying, Tim, there's Google Forms, they can capture the data. So I didn't really have the subject knowledge because I hadn't worked in the sixth form. So it's really Tim he's a bit he's a bit more mature. He's a bit older. He's been working the schools a bit longer than I have, but he's working the sixth form for, let's say, maybe 15 years. Okay. So he really got it, and he really understands the journey. Yeah. So he develops the product. Yeah.
So when you say mature, he's a little bit older.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting.
Looks great for his age.
I'm sure he does.
More hair than me, anyway. Yeah. Cool.
Well, that's, I suppose. So that's a really interesting place to be as well, really. So you obviously understand schools because you work in schools, which is great. And at the same time, you identified a particular need, along with the admissions piece going into sixth forms. So I'm assuming now, and looking on your website as well, I'll probably know some of this, but ultimately you also have a system that works obviously at year 7. So that first intake into a secondary school. And have you diversified into independents, which actually have a much broader sort of requirement as well, don't they, for admissions?
Yeah. So yeah, so I suppose we're 2020 now.
Yeah.
So 2017 sixth form focus, 2018 sixth form, and I think it was around 2018 that we've been building out the integration with Sims. So like one of the key parts to the puzzle is getting the data into Sims, getting the timetable, getting the basic student details into Sims, medical records, getting that into Sims after enrollment day, when we've just had enrollment day last week. So this week, all our schools are whizzing the data across. But typically, that exercise can take, not full time, but it can take weeks. And there are changes, blah, blah, blah. So for our schools, one of the most important parts was getting that data into Sims, and as much of it as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. So come 1st of September, hit the ground running, all the classes, blah, 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 all good. So that was something we were really focusing on. And then the schools were saying, well, if you're doing this for sixth form, okay, we have 10, 20, 30, 40 external students. Maybe Greenford had even more, 50. At year 7, we have 200. We have 200. So this, okay, we get the data from the ATF, we get the CTFs from the primaries, but we really want to collect more data, and we want it refreshed, and we want to know it. And there's more stuff we want to collect. And so can this work for us at year 7? So about 2 years ago, that was when some of the schools who had been using it at sixth form then started to trial it with the year 7. But like with all these things, there's always complications, and at sixth form, it's the students doing it. At year 7, it's the parents. So then we needed to develop a parent portal, if you like.
Yep.
All the language, then there was a lot more flexibility and complexity that had to be baked into the software. So what seemed like a simple thing, why can't we just do this for year 7, which is true, it's just an adaptation. Yep. When actually going through the process, we've had to learn a lot as well, and it has taken time to do that. And then you mentioned independent schools. Yep. So yeah, interesting. I mean, both Tim and I, we taught at state schools, and so we didn't have a lot of knowledge and expertise around how independent schools worked, and so yeah, we've just been learning that really. Last summer, Colston's started using an element of the so it started helping us to pilot an inquiry form.
Yep.
Because independent, they have parents applying, but they have lots more sort of elements along the way.
Yep.
And so they helped us with that. And then most recently, we've been working with the GDST, who have got an amazing sort of vision for admissions. So that's been incredible, because they are really smart and very ambitious, and as I said, got this sort of great idea of how admissions should look. Yep. So it's been really actually inspiring sort of working with them, because and sort of developing this thing so that it can do something and serve an independent school as well.
Yep.
So yeah, like all these things, it's an evolution, and things develop over time, I guess. But we're just sticking with admissions, with the admissions.
Well, do you know, there's a lot to do in admissions. You're right. I think you look at the independent requirement. It's quite a complex sort of requirement when you look at things like entry exams and fees and even you know, when you get down to, like you say, you know, entries, so inquiries, and some of these inquiries can be like years ahead of when the child is about to enter. You know, I've seen it where even parents have inquired before the child has been born. You know, so yeah, so I think it's much more complex, much more, you know, wider sort of requirement. But it seems like though that you and your company are without a shadow of a doubt really listening to your customers really well. You know, it's quite interesting hearing you talk because you're quite passionate about it. You like what you're doing, but at the same time you can tell that you're listening constantly to where your customers are, what they're talking about, and how they want to adapt to the solution. It's good. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think just to your point about independent schools, and then you've got kids already in the school, and then you've got the whole recognize. It's amazing when you actually get into a problem and you get into a product. You're like, wow, there's a lot to consider. Which on the surface it seems like it would be running, but it's actually there's a lot underneath. There's a lot of depth to it when you sort of start to get into the weeds. So, but yeah, I agree with you. Listening to customers, and that's been it's so important, isn't it? It's just and they drive the product. So I mean, obviously Tim had the idea, he had the initial idea, but it's been the schools who came on 2017, Best Grammar, they were phenomenal at sort of driving the product, had so many great ideas as well, and you know, all the way through, you know, I think as you know, we're obviously we're very small, so we're able to make decisions quickly. We're also we haven't got a huge number of schools, so if we make a decision, you know, the consequences aren't large. You know, if you're a Sims or a 1,000 schools, 2,000 schools, if you put 1 foot wrong, the implications and the repercussions could be significant. And so I think that's allowed us also to iterate very quickly and develop product quickly.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And a great team. Yeah.
Oh, that's fundamentally, you know, that's exactly where you need to get to. You need a great team. You know, it's all right listening to your customers, but if you can't deliver, then it doesn't matter really. But I think you're, you know, it's as you said, I think listening to your customers, understanding what their needs are. You know, and when you say you don't have many customers, I think you've done reasonably well. And seeing it's only been 4 years, it's not bad at all, really. You've done exceedingly well. So it's over 300 customers. You've got GDST. You know, it's probably the biggest. The Girls' Day Trust is probably the biggest in independence group in the UK. Yeah, it's good going.
Yeah, well, we just feel like it's just it's been really, we're really happy, but we do feel like it's really just a start, and there's so much potential in admissions, and you know, trying to spin the positives out of the ULAS experience. I think in that experience we put a lot of firepower into trying to get it in front of people, and you know, marketing and sales, if you like, and maybe we're definitely guilty of not investing in the product. Whereas in this time, we only had 1 salesperson, and we had four developers, and they're just going hammer and tong at the product. And so that's been, you know, and now it's up to 6 or 7, and they're just drilling admissions. And so, you know, all we want is to just develop the best admission system, and then if we can say that honestly, we're just trying to make the best admission system, then hopefully the sales will come. But really, we just want to make the best admission system we can.
Yeah. No, I think that's I think it's great. I remember talking to a number of sort of other business leaders when I was looking at going consulting and stuff, and one of the things that always came out was try and create that niche. Don't try and be a jack of all trades, because as soon as you try and be a jack of all trades, you start losing an element of that differentiator, that thing that makes you the person people want to go to. Because ultimately, you could ultimately be a salesperson across all loads of products, but ultimately, are you going to be as successful as focusing on one? Probably not. Because ultimately you need to live and breathe that particular product. I think in some ways, and I think that's the same when you're a business owner, and it sounds like that's exactly what you guys have done. Regarding the last solution that you had, regarding the to do with
year 7.
No, the previous solution altogether. ULAS. So with ULAS, so obviously it wasn't quite as successful as you wanted to be, but actually in some ways there's a positive to it, that you actually realised it and moved and pivoted across to working in emissions. So that's quite impressive, and lots of people don't do that. They sort of put the blinkers on. It's like that sort of black box thinking of, we must make this work, even though it's not going to work. So what made you sort of go, right, that's it, this isn't working now, let's really pivot? Is it because that Tim took that one developer away, or what was the reason?
I think it was a combination of things. It was do you know what, with the ULAS platform, it was massive. It was like, I'm not Nick, we were trying to create LinkedIn. It was honestly, we were biting off way more than we could chew, and Tim has amazing ideas, but sometimes, which we weren't doing, it's actually sometimes so important to say no to, and we were developing a profile. So it's called ULAS, Universal Levers Application Service.
Yeah.
So the concept is, wherever you want to go, admit ULAS application, you'll be able to create an application to go to the universe. Yeah.
I like the strap line.
Yeah. So university, you can go there. Apprenticeships, you can go there. World of work, just create your ULAS profile, work experience, you can find it. That was the idea. But what that means is that then we're developing the profile, developing this thing for university, personal statements, developing this thing that would convert into a CV, but then also trying to create a marketplace. Okay, which in the marketplace, university opportunities, so you do open days, then you're like taster days, then you're like, okay, do we try and hook in UCAS? Do we try and get the database from UCAS? Get the apprenticeship API? That is massive. Do we start spidering? Do we try and be like Expedia for work experience?
Wow.
Where does this end? And then, what about alumni is really in? Why didn't we try and get an alumni tracker on the back end of this thing? So we were trying to be all things to all people, and we just, and I said we had two developers working on that. And you need an army. You need an army to do that. And we were giving it. You won't believe this. We were giving it to schools for free, because the idea was, get the user base, and then the employers will come.
Yeah.
So that was the idea, which makes sense if the employers have got some money. But these days, and to be fair, in the school market, there was quite good competition already. Or you had Unifrog, who were doing a careers university search, and they started to develop an apprenticeship search, and some of the building what's personal statement, Bridge U, and then you've got careers platforms anyway, like Fast Tomato, you explore. You've got a lot. There's a lot there, and there's a lot of free resources, and then on the other end, graduate recruiters were going into the school leaver space, and they had great relationships with the employers. So yeah, it was. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I think what changed. Why did we pivot? Was that it was becoming clear to me that this thing was going to need a lot more. You'd need to finance it properly. You'd need to raise millions, frankly, to actually make it work. And actually, to be fair to them, I don't know if you know Ewan Blair or White Hat White Hat, Tony Blair's son. They've gripped it, and they've actually I think they're doing a great job there. They're actually creating that sort of model of linking young people to employers, and they've built out a proper platform. So it'll be really interesting to see where that goes. But that is, I think they've done the right thing, and you need to, it needs to be really. You do need to, yeah. You can't. But it's got to be serious, yeah. So yeah, thank God for Tim. Thank God. I think we have, but it did mean it meant basically, Nick, we went from 2013, 14, and then it was like, not a bit cliche, but it was like starting from scratch, in a way. We had a bit of legacy, like goodwill with the schools.
Yep.
So we had some relationships there, but it was like 2016, and then it was right. You're basically having to start us from scratch, and so it was some serious, like it was like doing a double marathon. Yeah. So, and it's still not over.
Well, it's never going to be over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it is great. It's great fun. It is great fun. Yeah.
I think it's good. I think it shows that you guys have learned from that experience one way or another, and now moved on to this, onto the next business, and like I say, there's lots of businesses that don't pivot because of the fact is they just feel it's the right thing. They have to make it work and spend a lot of money, and eventually, obviously nothing occurs, which is a bit of a shame. But regarding going back to your sort of emissions product, then, so. Where do you see the product in the market at the moment? So do you see much competition? Where's your differentiator? What makes you different? And ultimately, what is your sort of key value proposition? What's the thing that you do for schools? I'm assuming it's around the sort of saving time,